Good morning, one and all, and welcome to Arraignment Day Part 2. We've got the second one, probably another one to come in August. It's like wrestling pay-per-views. Like before you know it, the next one's there. But anyway, we've got a lot going on. One of the first things that we've got going on is the presence of Bennie Carollo. Bennie, welcome back. How's it going?
It's going great. It's good to be here.
It's good to have you here. You know, we book these appearances like a week to 4 weeks in advance. You never know if you're gonna like hit the bingo of getting an arraignment day for your appearance. So we're very happy to have you here. That of course will be happening technically after our program, but that doesn't mean that there won't be stuff happening in the run up to it. We've already got a couple of instances of that, including some recent communiques from the accused that perhaps we'll be referencing. And in addition to all of that, and there's a lot going on with the arraignment, obviously. We've got Christie coming out swinging in his first CNN town hall. That'll be fun. Gavin Newsom fighting with Sean Hannity. George Santos suddenly very worried about what's going on in the depths of space. That'll be fun, and a lot more besides, including, if you stick around for the aftermath, and you definitely should, a deeper look into what it's like to work for Alex Jones, which is simultaneously crazy and also like, I guess exactly what ChatGPT would have predicted working for Alex Jones was like. And then Marjorie Greene saw a woman without pants and has a lot of feelings about it. And some fourth graders get accused of being trans athletes when they're totally not. So only the most fun news coming up in the aftermath. But anyway, way in advance of all of that, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button and sharing the stream, that would be great. So the people know we're live and they can join in on this momentous day. But with all that said, Bennie, are you ready to start this thing?
Heck yeah, let's go.
Okay, let's do it. Let's jump right into it.
I'll just say not guilty. I didn't do anything wrong. Did nothing wrong. Presidential Records Act. It's not even a criminal event. There is no criminality here. It's ridiculous. And these people, look, they're using it. It's election interference. They're using it to get elected. They think that if they can damage somebody's reputation, they can do it. This is like Stalinist, whatever. This is the worst. Nobody ever thought this could happen in our country. And don't forget, I got more votes than any sitting president in history by a lot.
So yes, Donald Trump in one of his last media appearances before the arraignment says that he is going to plead not guilty. Not exactly a shocker there. Also not necessarily shocking that he did, you know, SNL has this guy who does their Trump impressions or whatever. And he does like a sequence of sketches where he just jumps from topic to topic to topic. I've never loved it as an impression of Donald Trump, but right there, that's basically what Trump was doing. It was like he had a list of his talking points that he needed to get to, and he also really needed to use the bathroom, so he was under some time constraints. I got the most votes, it's Stalinist, they're coming after me. Like he just ran through all of it. His heart didn't really seem to be in it right there. But it's a big day. It's a big day for Donald Trump. It's a big day for the country. I also think it's important for us to just pause for a second and take stock of where we're at. It's easy for Donald Trump to say, as he has about basically everything that's happened to America in the last decade, that nobody could have seen it coming. But like a decade ago, we probably wouldn't have been able to see it coming that we'd be where we're at. And some of the ways that manifests, I think, are pretty funny. I want to show you just a few seconds of Fox and Friends from this morning. Take a look.
But I don't think he'll have a mugshot because he's not somebody that is people think he's going to jet out of the country. I think he's going to stay and fight.
He does have a jet.
Eileen Cannon.
That is Fox and Friends, which is, like it or not, one of the most watched news shows in the world, having to like kind of jokingly debate whether the former president of the United States is going to go on the lam over the charges that he's facing. Bennie, what do you think?
I mean, okay, first and foremost, like just even the idea that Donald Trump might go to jail at some point is on its face like one of the it's deeply funny, right? Like at the end of the day, it is deeply, deeply funny. Even if you're one of the people that's kind of been frustrated by a lot of people like hyper fixating on like, oh, any day now Donald Trump's gonna go to jail. But like the whole like, oh, Donald Trump might go on the lam, like that's just like, it's just, everything about this is silly, it's funny. Like obviously Donald Trump committed these crimes, and like I will say it is weird that this hasn't happened more. I mean, the United States isn't like short on corrupt politicians. It's just that Donald Trump really has taken the cake. Like in a country where it's notoriously difficult to get in trouble for any type of corruption or like really anything as an elected official, Donald Trump might actually get in trouble and face some sort of consequence. And so I guess congratulations, Donald Trump, you're #1 here. Like
I know the
first, yeah.
The whole thing is wild. Like, I don't know if like I legally could do it, but I really am like, I'm motivated to write a movie. The premise of it is Donald Trump has to like go to his sentencing and he decides, you know what, no. And so he hops like a small private jet to rural Italy and gets a job as a laborer on like an olive farm or something. And then in the style of a Forrest Gump, he just goes from like new life to new life across the world, learning and growing as he evades justice. I think there's something there. I might have to work on that. Maybe a novel, that might be easier. But anyway, the story that will be playing out today is that Donald Trump will be turning himself in. We don't think there's gonna be handcuffing or there's gonna be digital fingerprinting. We don't think there'll be a mugshot. Maybe there'll be going on the lam, we're not sure. Eileen Cannon, by the way, who is going to be overseeing the case until something changes, and we think it might, is not gonna be in charge of what happens today. Duty Magistrate Judge Jonathan Goodman is gonna be overseeing this hearing. It's sort of an administrative thing. Christopher Michael Keese will be representing Trump, the former Florida Solicitor General. So they're saying that Donald Trump has not yet been able to secure new legal representation since his last team ran for the Hills. And look, a lot of people are taking that as an opportunity to like laugh at him, like that nobody will represent him. And I get that, feel free. But also, it definitely looks like that is a time wasting tactic. So Christie had mentioned yesterday during his town hall that they have what's referred to as a rocket docket, which sounds mildly uncomfortable. But anyway, they have a thing in Florida where they do try to expedite cases to the extent that they can. Donald Trump has a lot of incentives to not play ball with that, to try to drag this thing out as much as possible, primarily for the possibility that he could someday pardon himself. But even if he doesn't do that, that he could interfere with things, or he could just pass away from like the accumulated filet-o-fish that's caking the inside of his arteries. Either way, he's gonna try to slow roll this thing. And saying like, oh, boo hoo, I can't find a lawyer is definitely a way to do that. We might dive into some of the others later on this week. But do you have any expectations for how the arraignment will play out?
I honestly have no idea. I feel like with Donald Trump, like that's the thing. With Donald Trump, anything is possible. Like quite literally, like there have been so many instances where you think something's gonna happen and then it doesn't, or you don't expect anything to happen and all of a sudden it does. And so really Donald Trump is the ultimate wild card, especially Donald Trump in courts for some reason. So I don't know. I mean, fingers crossed, best case scenario. I mean, worst case scenario for us libs, right? But Donald Trump, nobody knows your situation better than you do. Maybe consider representing yourself. I don't know. It famously works well.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you need a little bit of help, you can get it from ChatGPT again. But I think he's a smart guy. He's got big brains. Anyway, yeah, I can't necessarily predict what is going to happen. I try not to pre-rule anything out. That is an adaptation I've had to make following January 6th because I did not expect January 6th to get as crazy as it did. I mean, I don't think a lot of people did. There were warnings, certainly, but it didn't seem likely. So I don't rule anything out. That said, will there be chaos at today's arraignment? Well, there already has been some, actually. Shockingly, there's already been a bomb threat. Here's a little bit of a footage of the bomb squad searching the area. So I don't know if they thought that perhaps there had been a bomb smuggled into the back of what looks like a TV, perhaps for the people who are waiting outside. But apparently, according to a reporter for MSNBC, press was being forced away from the scene shortly before 11 a.m. Tuesday. And so bomb threat was called in. It doesn't appear that there is an actual bomb. So far, just the threat. And so far, at least as of this morning, it looks like there are more reporters than there are Trump supporters there. Which I do want to pause for a second on that, Benny, because you really would think Donald Trump is being arraigned. According to QAnon and all that, this is the deep state trying to take down, like, effectively Jesus or whatever. And yet they didn't really show up in Manhattan for the hush money payments arraignment. They're not really showing up, at least as of now, for this. Is this just that they think it's pointless? Like they'll just, keep their powder dry and show up later if it starts to get more serious? Is this an indication of lowering of support? It doesn't seem like that based on the polls. He still has a lock on the Republican base. Are they don't feel like they can trust him to protect them if they do riot because of what happened with January 6th? Why do you think it is that they're not showing up for him when he asked them to protest? And he did, by the way, earlier this week, he said, see you in Miami on Tuesday. He was trying to encourage them to, but they're not really showing up.
Yeah, honestly, unironically, I think it's because they won't be able to sit and listen to Donald Trump talk about how much he hates trans people. Like straight up, that's it. That's why people like Donald Trump, right? They're like these hateful people that get off on making other people like miserable, right? They just genuinely enjoy causing suffering. And every time that they're screaming in public about something and everybody else is uncomfortable or angry with them, they're like, yes, I'm getting exactly the attention I want. Donald Trump getting arraigned is not an opportunity for that, right? There's the person suffering in that situation is Donald Trump, and these people want to follow a strong man, not this random weak guy that's like getting dragged into a courthouse to sit here and like cry about why he should be able to get away with federal crimes. So I honestly, I think that's why. I genuinely think that like to a lot of Trump supporters, Trump is more entertainment value than he is anything else.
But wouldn't, like, in theory, being there, I guess he doesn't talk, but that should be entertaining. And maybe if there was a big enough crowd, maybe he would stop and talk. Like, I feel like you would want to be a part of history and be there. Like, I don't know, it just seems so weird that they are so hyper obsessed with him and yet so disinterested when it comes to his direct request for them to show up on the streets. I don't know. Maybe it should give us a little bit of faith in democracy that people aren't so ready to constantly riot for him. I don't know. That said, despite the fact that not a lot of people are showing up ahead of the arraignment, Donald Trump does still have his defenders, and they are doing what they can, whatabouting as fast as they can. Here's Marjorie Greene.
Today, I'd like to announce that I'm writing an appropriations rider to defund Jack Smith's special counsel, his office, and the investigation. This is a weaponized government attempt to take down the top political enemy and leading presidential candidate of the United States, Donald J. Trump. We cannot allow the government to be weaponized for political purposes. I'd also like to ask all of my colleagues to join me in this effort. We have to use the power of appropriations to stop the weaponization of government, especially in light that we know that there are others who are guilty of true crimes. Never forget that former Secretary of State and Senator Hillary Clinton had classified documents on Anthony Weiner's laptop, who was convicted of sexting a minor inappropriate pictures. This is not how classified documents should be handled. There should have been an investigation done into that. Don't forget Joe Biden's documents that are sitting in his garage next to his Corvette where the door opens and closes.
Okay, the phrase next to the garage where the door opens and closes is never not gonna be funny to me. Like, yeah, doors can open and close. That is true, you've nailed it. But substantively, her attempted defense of Donald Trump is funny in a couple different ways. She cited a little bit of whataboutism that in her mind should, I guess, get Donald Trump off scot-free. So Hillary Clinton and Anthony Weiner, did she put a little bit of extra stank on the Weiner there? I feel like she did. But anyway, she said they should have been investigated. And I actually agree, they should have been investigated. Sorry, they were investigated. I don't know why she doesn't know that, because she pretends to be really interested in that. They were investigated. Oh, she doesn't explicitly say that Biden should be investigated for the garage where the door opens and closes, but he's being investigated right now. So all of what she is explicitly saying, as well as implying she would like to happen, has already happened or is happening right now, but that does not placate her literally at all. Because the point of whataboutism is not to establish the same harsh standard for everyone that's being cited. It's to distract from what's going on and to imply that there should be no standard, that nobody should actually face justice. That's what she's actually doing here. Benny, what do you think?
I don't know, John. Have you considered that those facts, that those investigations happened or are happening, is actually very inconvenient to Marjorie Taylor Greene's point and like Republicans' perception of reality? Like, because that's really what it's all about. Who cares about reality anymore? Am I right? You just Donald Trump's the main character, and so we should all just be these NPCs that he just goes through in life just to accomplish all these quests, right? But unironically, that's kind of how these Republicans think. Like, even like the slightest hint of fairness is like extreme inequality to them. It's extreme unfairness. I mean, these are the same people who literally like bullied Twitter into turning off their like Nazi filtering system, which is used in Germany, but nowhere else, because lo and behold, it would flag too many Republican elected officials. And so these people claim that they're being silenced while they're running around like dog whistling and saying like racist nonsense. So of course, when the legal system is like correctly applied to them, they're gonna kick and scream and pretend like it's the world's greatest injustice.
Yeah, 100%. By the way, like in terms of injustice, she's like the point of whataboutism is I'm going to imply that there's other injustice. So let's just focus on that. So like I wish that I could like sit her down and ask her seriously. So you're saying that they mishandled the documents. Now I understand that you will not admit that Donald Trump did, but he did. So do you believe that Hillary Clinton should have been locked up for that? Do you believe that Biden should be locked up for that? I don't know honestly what she would say if she had to speak honestly, if she was hooked up to a polygraph or whatever, because she doesn't want them to be locked up if that sets a standard where Trump would also be locked up for doing an even worse version of what she's saying they did. It's such a waste of time, but it is actually not necessarily the dumbest defense of Donald Trump from a prominent Republican that we've seen recently. I think Kevin McCarthy might actually win on that. Take a look at this.
Is that a good look for the former president to have boxes in a bathroom?
I don't know. Is it a good picture to have boxes in a garage that opens up all the time? A bathroom door locks.
Okay, so again, that's brainless whataboutism, but it's even more brainless than usual because there's at least two very big issues with what he said right there. So first of all, I'm gonna blow his mind and maybe increase his home security by pointing out to him that, did you know garages can lock, Kevin McCarthy? You should look into it for your own garage, perhaps. In fact, if there's any petty thieves in the area around Kevin McCarthy's house, they might want to just pull up his garage door because apparently he's never been securing it. And by the way, Biden has specifically said that the Corvette is in a locked garage, so it's not like it's sitting on the street. By the way, you can still have an issue with it regardless. Whatever minor documents Biden had there that he willingly gave back without a raid, they shouldn't have been there in the first place. You could have a problem with that. But the garage door part of that, Benny, isn't even the biggest problem. His defense of Trump having many boxes in a bathroom is that bathrooms can lock. But as many people probably have already gotten to mentally, and Miles Dyer points out, yeah, from the inside. So I suppose when you're sitting on the can and reading about plans to invade Madagascar, yes, you can lock the door, and you'll probably want to because nobody wants to accidentally barge in on that. But how are you gonna lock it when you're outside of the bathroom? What bathroom locks from the outside? And is he implying that they routinely lock the bathrooms at Mar-a-Lago from the outside? That's not generally how bathrooms work in resorts. Benny, what do you think?
It's just so silly. Like, I love the idea of somebody like going to the bathroom, sitting there in front of like all the classified documents, being like, time for some casual reading, no big deal. What a convenient location for all of these secret documents. Like, I mean, I don't know. It's definitely more silly than the garage, right? Because it's like, oh, I got all these classified documents. What am I gonna do? I don't know. I guess I'll throw them in the garage. Definitely makes more sense than the bathroom. At least like, I don't know if you're putting random stuff somewhere, but like, it does kind of say something, I think, about politicians in the United States, especially at that level. Just like the general sense of entitlement they have to like any degree of creature comfort without regard for their jobs or responsibility or anything. I guess it just kind of shows to me that like there's a lot of politicians who don't take this seriously, which I guess as somebody who has worked in politics, I can pretty much guarantee you a lot of them don't. Like, so I think that really, I guess, is the lesson here.
Yeah, I don't like them being in the garage either, but I think we can all agree that the bathroom is worse. I think we can all agree that, my God, Kevin McCarthy, who for decades was like, man, I got this locked down. I'm gonna rise up the ladder of power, and then someday I'll get to pretend that I don't think it's weird that Donald Trump, the apprentice guy, is storing nuclear secrets in a bathroom. Look, nobody buys that. It's super weird to do that. And honestly, like just in terms of interpretation, if Biden puts some boxes in a bathroom, in a garage, it implies to me that he probably didn't know that there were classified documents in there. He was just storing stuff where you store excess stuff that you don't particularly care about, which is a garage. That's what you do. To store boxes in a bathroom, that does not imply that just you don't care. That implies that you've got so much stuff that you're storing that, like a hoarder, you just have to make do with the space that you have at that point, and it does not reflect well on him. Sorry, Kevin McCarthy, you're gonna have to do a little bit better than that. None of these defenses, by the way, mean anything in a courtroom setting. None of the whataboutism is going to matter when it comes time to do the actual trial. Apologies for that. Anyway, with that said, we're gonna take our first break. When we come back, Christie had a town hall. We're gonna be breaking it down. He was actually pretty aggressive, so we're gonna show you some highlights after this. Okay, everyone, why don't we see what is going on out there? Okay, Apollo Racer said in the Twitch chat, a politics girl raised an interesting question. If Trump really is innocent and has a case, where are all the high-priced, high-powered, high-profile defense lawyers who would be falling all over themselves to represent him if he were innocent? Yeah, look, once you acknowledge the context, I think there are some potential issues with that, especially in the area of him not paying. But even if it didn't pay, if you were a right-wing lawyer and this was actually a slam dunk, or even had a good chance of succeeding, why the hell wouldn't you get involved? Honestly, why wouldn't you get involved even if you didn't think that it was gonna succeed, but that you could just drag it out and eventually he becomes president? It's a moot point at that point. It doesn't really make any sense. I kind of wonder why they're not asking any of the defenders of Trump this question, because it does seem really hard to explain. Benny, any thoughts?
I kind of think that a lot of the Republican Party is done with Donald Trump. Like, I don't know, like maybe this is wishful thinking on my part, but I do think that like Republican Party leadership thinks that Donald Trump is too unstable to really land the plane on like anything that like the big donors actually want, and they feel kind of trapped. And so if I had to make a guess about the way the next election cycle is gonna go, I think Republicans are just gonna have to take the L, right? And I think that is going to be the trajectory of things. And so I don't think that any of like the serious people within the Republican Party are really gonna wanna put all of their eggs in that basket. And that's why like the only people who are putting their eggs in that basket are people like Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yeah, maybe. And look, as I talked about on the pre-show today, Nikki Haley and Tim Scott both went a couple steps beyond where they've been up until now in terms of criticizing Trump over this, saying that it's serious and all that. They hadn't been willing to do that last week. Anyway, okay, by the way, hold on. I saw someone pointed out that commercial bathrooms do lock. You know, I get that. Like I went to a McDonald's and you had to have them buzz you in, but I am assuming that's not how the bathrooms in Mar-a-Lago work. Am I crazy to not assume that? I don't know. Anyway, Andrew Ullman says in a super chat, John, your story suggests Trump can learn and grow, so it must be fantasy. But I like writing fantasy, so I think that works. I actually very quickly asked ChatGPT to give a pitch for a story of Trump on the lam learning lessons and interacting with the common folk. And I think it might be worth looking into, maybe as a movie, if we can get someone who does a good enough Trump impression. Anyway, Cloud Dragon gifted 5 memberships to the Damage Report over on YouTube. Thank you very much for that. By the way, do want to remind you, membership comes with a variety of different benefits. So there's obviously all of the members' content, across the network you can get access to by becoming a member. There's special bonus content for members at tier 2 on our YouTube page. You get access to our weekly top 10 lists. This week, Francesca and I gave the top 10 predictions we have for what sorts of experiences Donald Trump will have in jail. That was a fun one. At tier 3, you get access to our monthly members hangouts. You also get, a colored name, you get a badge, you get emojis and things like that. So lots of reasons to become a member, and we appreciate the support of our members. For now, though, Descender Dragon sent in a super chat saying, Benny, my favorite co-host, you have incredibly smart takes backed with a ferociously contagious laugh. You're pretty good too, John. Much love, team. Happy Pride. Thanks. Thank you. Very nice. Okay, let's see. Sticks Dragon says, love to all. Also, John, your hair is awesome, just not as nice as Benny's. Thanks. You can just compliment Benny. You don't have to drag me as an associated part of it. You people are a bunch of jerks. Anyway, moving out of our social break, why don't we take a little brief look at some of the highlights from last night's Christie town hall, starting off with this.
He hasn't won a damn thing since 2016. 3-time loser. 2018, we lost the House. 2020, we lost the White House. We lost the United States Senate a couple of weeks later in 2021. And in 2022, we lost 2 more governorships, another Senate seat, and barely took the House of Representatives when Joe Biden had the most incompetent first 2 years I've ever seen in my life. Loser, loser, loser. Now we're getting going, it'll be different this time. Why? Why will it be different this time? Those arguments need to be made, and I'm not afraid to make them.
He goes on to say there, because I'm not scared of Donald Trump and because it's the truth. So I thought in a rational world, that would be the part of this town hall that everyone remembers it for, that raises the profile of Christie and does serious damage to Donald Trump. Then I woke up and I realized that we don't live in that world. But shouldn't it though, Benny? Like, Christie is not wrong. Donald Trump being a part of the GOP has not helped them in many elections and special elections. And I know that they have so many excuses for why it's not his fault. My God, no one in American history has ever gotten so many passes for constant predictable failure as Donald Trump. But why is that point not effective, or do you think that it might be?
I kind of think that it is to some people. So I think it is to specific people within the Republican Party. But the Republican Party is incredibly divided right now, where if you look at the last election in Michigan, for example, you'll see that Democrats got a trifecta specifically because Republicans couldn't stop hyperfixating on going after trans children, right? And it turns out that's unpopular, right? Making your entire political platform just hating trans people just literally does not work. And so when you take in things like this, you take in the relationship with Donald Trump and the Republican Party, there's a chunk of the Republican Party that is just completely desperate, bloodthirsty, all they want to do is just scorched earth and just be the most horrific people that they possibly can. And then there's the other part of the Republican Party that wants to just make money and wants to win. And right now, they're quiet, right? They're being really, really quiet about the reality of Donald Trump, the reality of all this anti-trans nonsense, and how Republicans are shooting themselves in the foot. But so I think what we're seeing right now is the most unhinged part of the Republican Party is just the loudest, and they're dominating all of the airwaves. When ultimately, I think there's a pretty decent chunk of the Republican Party that's just kind of over it, and I think that's who Christie is speaking to in the moment.
Yeah, maybe. Look, I know that I obviously do not speak for Republicans. I barely speak for anyone, even myself. But watching the town hall, I just thought if Republicans were not insane, they would just go for this guy, because he's gonna give them the tax cuts and the deregulation that they want. Economically, he's gonna have a very similar agenda. There was even some xenophobia against China. He might keep the tariffs. Economically, it's gonna be very similar, but he's not going to turn off so many independents with the constant culture war stuff that wins you Republican primaries, but it can't be demonstrated any more than it already has, does not win you general elections. And yet Christie, if we jump ahead to graphic 3, right now he's at 2%. Now he just launched his presidency, or his campaign, but he's been in American politics for quite a while. A lot of people know who he is. Will a town hall like this rise his numbers? I don't know. It's also possible that in that poll, at least the 19% that Ron DeSantis gets, that is not very good, man. That could be redistributed to one of these other contenders. Maybe Christie gets to 20%. I just feel like it's not gonna be much of a campaign with Donald Trump versus Ron DeSantis, but Christie, at least on some of these topics, could present a bit of an alternative. I don't know. And if Republicans are as sick of Donald Trump as you're saying, you would think that would be appealing, but it remains to be seen.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really the richer segment of the Republican Party that's just in it for the money, right? Like, cause like there are a lot of folks who are like really rich. I'm talking like real rich, right? Not like your, local car dealership owner, cause those folks, they love Trump, right? But like the really rich folks who are trying to make like real money, they just don't want to deal with Donald Trump's shenanigans. It just is a lot of work to constantly being like, oh yes, Mr. Trump, you're so smart, you're such a brilliant man. Oh, and just like to baby him, right? And so somebody like Christie is more workable, like sort of like more willing to like play ball the way they want them to. Not necessarily the crowd pleaser though for a lot of the Republican Party. And so that's where I think kind of like a big part of the split is. And I think that's kind of where we saw that in Fox News a while ago, and just this real contention between like a lot of the money behind the party versus like the actual voters of the party. And I think if there's so many candidates running against Donald Trump, to me that reads as them banking on Donald Trump being in jail, or this court stuff really bogging him down to the point where he just isn't able to campaign. And that kind of being the opener to the Republican Party saying goodbye to Donald Trump, which I think would crater the entire party.
Yeah, but honestly, long term, that might be a prerequisite to them eventually being able to win national elections, like legitimately win them by getting people to vote for them. In any event, let's go to a little bit more Christie.
I mean, how do you beat someone if you won't talk about them? How do you beat them if you won't distinguish yourself from them? I think, like I said before, they're playing politics. The second one is some of them are afraid. They're afraid of him. Look what he does, right? I got a nickname now. I never got one all through 16. I got one now, which is really nice. Makes me feel even more important. I'm just telling you, I've known him for 22 years. The only thing he understands is force. The only thing he understands is coming right at him and making your case. And if these other candidates don't want to do it, the American people and Republican primary voters have to start to understand this. When did we get to the point where we're always blaming our adversaries for the weakness of our candidates? Oh, it's the Democrats' fault, it's DOJ's fault, it's this person's fault, it's the media's fault. How about it's his?
I think, again, look, that could have been delivered a little bit, more strongly. I suppose, I'm not the only one, I think, who noticed that despite some good lines, and I think what should be effective attacks, the audience was silent for Christie. They did not do the thing that they did with Donald Trump, where they just carted in a bunch of his supporters, or maybe they weren't able to find them. Maybe they don't actually exist, I don't know. But it was crickets, even with effective attacks. Even the people who, like, there were a lot of DeSantis supporters in the room, and you would think, like, I'm not gonna vote for Christie, but wouldn't it be great to have him attack Trump and take Trump down a notch? They weren't even cheering for this. But I think that he is right to point out that a lot of those people who were technically running against Donald Trump up until literally this morning weren't even willing to criticize him on this massive scandal. They're barely willing to acknowledge that he's in the race. They're like running as if they can just have their own little mini election that doesn't cross over with him. They never attack him. He hopefully leaves them alone. They sell a book or something, and that's it. I don't know, it needs to be pointed out more when candidacies are obviously not serious. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it really sounds right there that Christie, rather than making the case against Trump, is making the case to make the case against Trump, if that makes sense. It really read like an invitation to get other Republicans to also jump in on attacking Trump, which I think is kind of why it had like a little bit of a softer reaction, because it did, like, obviously it stings, right? Donald Trump's a loser, 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 right? But also it was couched very much in like, look, at the end of the day, we have to blame candidates for losing. Maybe it's just a bad candidate, and maybe that bad candidate is Donald Trump. And so maybe we open that door. And so that really feels like what he's doing is not even so much making the case against Donald Trump, but just like inviting people to do that for themselves.
Yeah, that's true. he also, by the way, he never like named names on the terrible candidates that Trump has brought in and propped up. He's not going to do that. He's criticizing Trump, but he's not criticizing, Herschel Walker and Kari Lake and Dr. Oz and all the other people that didn't have to be candidates, if not potentially for Donald Trump. Also, by the way, I don't want you to like think that I think that Chris Christie's great or whatever. Chris Christie is willing to criticize Trump, and that's cool. He also, by the way, would not say basically anything about what he would do when it comes to abortion. He was dodging and dipping and weaving, and he didn't want to go on the record at all in that, which, if you're worried about your rights, is not reassuring. Similarly on guns, he wouldn't say anything about what he would do in terms of guns. So not the bold, courageous fighter on those topics that he's made himself out to be. And also, by the way, he said he would consider making changes to Social Security, including by cutting benefits to wealthy Americans, which you say to sound populist. The wealthiest Americans don't care about the loss of that money, but also raising the retirement age for younger Americans. So that sucks. No mention of raising taxes to pay for the continuation of these programs. Anderson Cooper had no follow-ups about raising taxes. It would have been avoided, or he just would have denied the possibility, but you at least have to ask the question, and Anderson Cooper would not do that. So on many of these topics, not great. And also, by the way, even in his criticism of Trump, and I'll end on this, like he started off the town hall by saying, it's gonna be a rerun of Trump, it's gonna be even worse because he's gonna be more mad. But like he pitched a future Trump presidency as being like a waste of time, or maybe he'll be rude, not damaging. Like to hear Chris Christie tell it, there's no real threat to Donald Trump becoming president. It's just not preferable. And I feel like if you're the guy who's gonna try to take him down, being unwilling to reckon with how different he is in terms of the effect he'll have on American governance, that's not the way to go. Any final thoughts before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, on that front, it's pretty simple. And that's, I think, mostly because like, look, pretty much every Republican out there would make it illegal to be trans if they could, right? They're just not gonna say it in the same way that Donald Trump will say it, right? Because when you say it, then all of a sudden people like don't like you or something like that. It's a wild concept. Same thing goes with abortion and like a ton of other issues. It turns out Republican ideas are deeply unpopular. So instead of focusing on the differences of their ideas, they have to look at like the difference of how those ideas are presented. And that right there is pretty much 80% of every Republican primary.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. By the way, unless I missed it, there wasn't a question about any of that culture war stuff in terms of attacks on trans athletes or anything like that. I actually found that to be interesting that you didn't have a bunch of these Republican town hall people like trying to get him to attack Bud Light or something. Anyway, maybe they were just so disinterested in the audience they didn't think to bring it up. With that said, let's move on to something different. A guy who is not technically running for president and swears he's not going to. Gavin Newsom on Sean Hannity. Take a look at this.
We're sanctuary state. You're going to take care of them. They should be happy.
Look, we'll deal with the car. I mean, come on, this is California.
I know it's California.
Okay?
I'm aware of where I am.
On this way, the 4th largest economy in the world. We can handle
Of course you
all
can.
of this, okay? I'm a border state. Ron DeSantis is not. I know he's desperate to get in on the action.
No, because a lot of people
belly flop. Donald Trump is going to clean his clock.
Is it fair that Joe Biden?
DeSantis has belly flopped. He will clean his clock. This is a stunt. It's embarrassing. It's pathetic.
I disagree. I think he did the right thing.
Oh my God. It's easy to forget with Sean Hannity because he's been in media for so long and he recorded himself doing Krav Maga for a few minutes years ago and he still plays it on a weekly basis, that you'd be led to believe that he's strong or whatever. But that was not a very strong reaction to Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom was kind of steamrolling him. Like Gavin Newsom's claiming it's a stunt. It's obviously stunt. And Sean Hannity's like, no, I don't think that it is. Yeah, first of all, you definitely think it is. You liking a stunt doesn't make it not a stunt, buddy. But I love that he thinks that he's got some sort of like amazing like counterpoint to Gavin Newsom, like, oh, you say that you like immigrants, why don't you want to have them? And Gavin Newsom doesn't like fall into the trap. He says, yeah, no, we'll take them. We can integrate them in. That doesn't make what DeSantis is doing awesome or moral or even legal. You can want to integrate immigrants into your community and still think that using them like they're pawns on an effing chessboard is deeply immoral. And for Sean Hannity, a guy who I'm sure considers himself a serious Christian, to talk about this topic, to talk about this stunt, and have that little like ass-eating grin on his face. These are human beings that are being used like cards in a deck by Ron DeSantis. So while I'm not like a huge fan of Gavin Newsom or whatever, I do like his stance on this, his willingness to attack Ron DeSantis. Last week, he was talking about the possibility of kidnapping charges, and I think that he got the better of Sean Hannity there. But Benny, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, aside from all my random issues with Gavin Newsom, I think you could do a lot better job in a million different ways. Like, that is the way to deal with the Republicans, like fundamentally, because at the end of the day, they're like pathetic cowards. That's why they're Republicans, right? That's their whole political ideology is just wrapped up in like pathetic cowardice. So of course you have people like Ron DeSantis doing like these ridiculous stunts in public to try and show off how strong he is, and then you have people like Sean Hannity trying to like defend them and stuff like that. But no, steamrolling them is the correct answer, right? Call them losers, say what they're doing is like pathetic and like Weasley, call them for what they are, right? We really need to get past this idea that politics in the United States is about some sort of marketplace of ideas or some sort of debate between, intellectual rivals. No, it is a bunch of silly, clownish children who are deeply selfish and cowardly versus like, some frustrating liberals, to be entirely honest, who really need to give up some of this capitalism stuff, but ultimately at least aren't trying to be malicious, most of the time.
Most of the time, and they've been dragged to the right position gradually and way belatedly. That said, let's go to just a little bit more of this interaction. Take a look.
I think he's a man of decency and character. I'm really proud of the president. I'm proud of what he's accomplished.
Is he strong enough to be president? That's what I'm
strong enough. Look what he just did to McCarthy. He ran circles. Look at the vote card.
I didn't like the vote. I wouldn't have voted for it.
Exactly. Kevin got played by the president of the United States. I'm for results. I don't think the American people benefit. I like the plan that would have saved $4.8 trillion.
That was interesting because you'll notice that Sean Hannity went into that with Biden's brains are Swiss cheese. He can't do the job, and came out of it like, I didn't like the deal. I would have done a different thing. He totally ran away from that position. I think it's a perfectly fine conversation to be had about whether Joe Biden has the mental wherewithal, let alone the energy to be an effective president, especially with the Republicans in control of the House. But Sean Hannity doesn't seem confident to actually make that case. Or at the very least, he was successfully distracted by Gavin Newsom, almost instantaneously by Gavin Newsom just saying, hey, squirrel, the debt deal. Sean Hannity was immediately off of it. And I don't know if it's that Gavin Newsom is a particularly effective debater, for this form of debate, or just that, like, you gotta remember that Sean Hannity does not do oppositional interviews very often. It's just not his style, and he seems very ill-equipped for it. I don't know if Gavin Newsom would be as effective, against a Republican candidate on a debate stage or whatever, but he just rolled Sean Hannity. I almost felt bad for the guy. Any final thoughts?
No, yeah. I mean, like, honestly, at least as far as the argument about like, oh, is Donald Trump well, or is Joe Biden well? It kind of doesn't matter, right? He's the president of the United States. His staff is doing most of the work anyway, which is like an unfortunate reality that like we don't expect presidents to really be hands-on. And the only president that has been hands-on recently is Donald Trump, who's been very much breaking things. But like all of that said, like, yeah, Gavin Newsom did a pretty good job of like just kind of like steamrolling through Sean Hannity, and Sean Hannity just kind of like folded in that instance, which is, I guess, a little cathartic to see.
Yeah, I don't mind it after all the damage he's done. Anyway, with that said, we do have to take our second break of the hour, but much more to come. Don't go anywhere. Okay, everybody, let's see what is going on out there. Descender Dragon said in a super chat saying, best laughs, number 1, Benny, number 2, Franny, number 3, the Crypt Keeper. Your laugh is also nice, John. Happy Friday. So you won. I need to take more note of Francesca. Francesca's got a good laugh, and she's a comedian, so she's tuned into the comedy, I suppose. Six Dragon says, John, your hair is awesome, and I'm here for your breakdown of the news. Thank you. I hope to attract viewers with my breakdown of the news, but if not, the backup plan is hair. Anyway, Mikey says, lawyers are staying away because if he gets convicted, their lives will be in danger from MAGA lunatics. That's interesting. I hadn't thought about retribution if they fail to save him. Would they be angry at his lawyers if they fail? I mean, I think, look, there's potentially a case to be made there. I think that it's unlikely that you even get to that point because there are, between signing on to be Trump's lawyer and that, there's so many times when he's gonna try to get you to break the law or successfully get you to break the law and your law license is taken away. Like, I don't even know if you should be planning that far ahead if you're a lawyer. Anyway. Let's see, Metsat Sochi says 2 woke months after 2 months of being a subscriber over on Twitch. Thank you very much for that. Keyjohn said, I don't know if it reached you, but the gun crazies will most likely use it's not the guns. Today, streets in Nottingham, UK were closed due to a major incident for about an hour. There were only rumors, but later they released a statement that someone stole a car, killed the owner, then drove into a group of students and had a knife. 3 people dead, several injured. Geez, that does sound devastating. Yes, I think that your prediction that people, at least in the US, right wingers that don't want guns to be restricted, even if that would save lives, will say, look, you can still kill people. That person was able to kill a few people with a car and with a knife. Can you imagine if they had an AR-15? Like, do we need to debate this? All the shooters here that get an AR-15 and kill a bunch of people could save time and money and possibly being discovered by the FBI by just getting a car and a knife. If it's as easy, it clearly isn't. Why do we have to have so many stupid, pointless debates trying to convince people that are not actually interested in reason of that which is on its face obvious? Anyway, Cray Cray Souffle says, feeling the heat in Miami, Dragon Squad. Oh, Cray Cray is at ground zero, fun. Blue Lizard Gut says, there was a Funko for Benny in the box with John's and Franny's. Did she get it? Did you get the Funko from Blue Lizard Guts?
Not yet.
Okay, so Blue Lizard Guts, I am familiar with where they are. I didn't open it and I didn't store it. I don't know if they were actually labeled. I think that has led to some of the issues, or if they were labeled, I don't think the label was maintained. But let's talk briefly after the show, and I'll try to get it and we can get it sent over to you. I've got one of them right here actually, and Francesca does have hers, both of Francesca as well as Karina. Okay, dozens of mostly Donald Trump backers began gathering at the federal courthouse in Miami. Okay, we'll see what happens. Dozens though? Like, I would hope, maybe this is me being arrogant. I would hope that if I were being arraigned, dozens of you hopefully would show up just for little old me. And I was barely president of the United States for 4 years. I mean, come on, dozens of people. That's embarrassing. Okay, everybody, let's jump into a little bit of fun, I suppose, starting with this.
Hi guys, Congressman George Santos here. I like space, and I like to think that humans are not the only form of intelligent life the universe has to offer. Anyways, I have a bone to pick with President Biden and the DOD after recent reports coming from former intelligence officers and a whistleblower that say the US government has recovered parts, and I quote, of exotic origin, non-human intelligence, whether extraterrestrial or unknown origin, based on the vehicle's morphology and material science testing and the possession of unique atomic arrangements and radiological signatures. That's a whole lot of scientific talk to say that whatever we may have recovered is not from this planet.
George Santos is a legitimately bad guy, but I do love how excited about space he is. He's really interested in all this UFO stuff that's going around. But after the lead-in, I do want to give you, he has serious questions, jokes aside, about whether the US has been developing weapons with like flying saucer parts for decades. here he is making the case.
So what are your thoughts? Does the US government possess this technology? And if so, why are they hiding it? Or perhaps they're not. Maybe it's already in your iPhone and responsible for the crazy leaps in microchip R&D over the last few decades. Maybe we'll never know. But I will still call on the president and the DOD to declassify this information. The American people deserve to know the truth, Mr. President.
I thought when I first saw that thank you for the sidebar. I thought that the truth is out there thing was added by Patriot Takes. No, he did it. So let's be very clear that this is yet another attempt to distract from everything that's going on by George Santos. As long as we understand that, we can have some fun and talk about it. But he is definitely trying to distract us. Benny, what do you think? Oh my God, the dance.
I mean, this seems like to me just him angling for his future career on YouTube. Like, cause he he was doing the YouTube voice. He was literally doing the mid-tier YouTube voice and cadence and everything. And he's like, perhaps the government has aliens and we don't know about it. Like, come on, this is just like mid-tier YouTube comment. Like.
What is going on in this B-roll?
Oh my God. But like, I don't know. Oddly enough, I was talking about this with my boyfriend yesterday. No, I think they're aliens. They've maybe been to Earth, but like, they're probably not super interesting. They're probably like grad students of like whatever alien university. And they're like, yeah, go study Earth for your thesis or something like that. It's not interesting, right? Like, we are one planet of billions, okay? There's plenty of interesting stuff out there. So are there aliens? Probably. Is the government working with them to make microchips? Almost certainly no.
And what about our weapons is so advanced that this clearly must have come from Alpha Centauri? I wish there were aliens. I love sci-fi. I write sci-fi myself. I watch it and have been reading it as long as I've been alive. But you know why I know that aliens have not visited Earth? Because that would be awesome. And we don't live in a world where awesome things are truly possible. Certainly not on a cosmic scale. But I want to close by agreeing as much as I've ever agreed with anything anyone has ever said on the show about the YouTube thing. He started the video saying, I'm George Santos and I like space, which sounds like the lead in to like a kid's YouTube channel about space where that's how every video starts. And then like, it even ended like a YouTube video. He wasn't sure what the call to action was supposed to be. So he was like, maybe we'll never know, but I'm still gonna ask Biden if he did it. Like you can script it, buddy. You can do a second take. Come on, digital footage is free. You can do as many as you want. Anyway, he is definitely trying to set himself up for like an ancient aliens type thing. It also had a little bit of like the TikTok vibe of just like making crazy blanket statements that have no evidence whatsoever about conspiracy theories, and then the video will get like 100 million views or whatever. So I think that he's also got a little bit of that youth thing. I think he can straddle the line between TikTok and YouTube. Anyway, with that said, why don't we move from the insane to the maybe positive? Let's jump into this. New York City this weekend announced a new minimum pay rate for app food delivery workers that could significantly raise the standard of living for people working in those services in New York City. So we know that they were already popular. Things like Uber Eats, DoorDash leading to the pandemic, they rose a ton during that period. In 2019, by the way, delivery accounted for about 7% of total US restaurant sales. They spiked in 2020. They're still higher than they were pre-COVID. There's 60,000 food delivery workers in Manhattan alone. So this is not a small thing that affects just a few people. This is many, many people. On average, they make about $7.09 an hour, which I don't know how you can live on that in an area like Manhattan. They're not necessarily living in Manhattan, but you can't live near there at $7.09. This new pay rate will eventually allow them to earn $19.96 an hour. It's going to more than double by July 12th, then increase again to nearly $20 an hour in April 2025. So it's going to be sort of phased in, and it will also then be adjusted annually for inflation. So you're not going to be surprised to find out that the services, Uber Eats, DoorDash, hate this and are going to fight back as hard as they can against it. But if you're one of these delivery workers, I mean, this is potentially massive change to the amount of money that you're making. Benny, what do you make of it?
Yeah, this is absolutely huge because like the unfortunate reality is this is the future of work, right? Giant companies found a really fun loophole, which is, if somebody's technically an independent contractor, you can basically pay them nothing. Oh my goodness gracious. And so this should have been dealt with like 10 years ago. Like that really is the issue, is that anytime there's some sort of new innovation under capitalism to make people's lives more miserable and to like control them in one particular way, like to scrutinize their lives and put them under like an app that's like watching them all the time while they do their work. It always takes like decades of organizing work to bring us back to where we were just before that rolled out. And so it's cool that this is happening, right? And I think other places are also trying to do this as well. But also, it is really shameful that it took this long to happen. And I hope that the law is written broad enough that it applies to more than just food delivery services, because there's a heck of a lot of other companies that are doing the same exact thing.
Yeah, 100%. And I would also file under the same sort of rubric of it's really going to come down to the details of they need to be on the lookout for this. If you pass this, you make it official, you then need to be watching year after year, talking to the actual workers to make sure that their experience is anything like what, in the graphics that we've shown you, it's supposed to be. Because as of right now, the city is going to allow the delivery apps flexibility in how they pay the delivery workers the new minimum. So as long as workers make the minimum amount, apps can choose to pay them per trip, per hour worked, or through their own formula. They additionally will have to pay them for the time that they spend waiting for a trip and their trip time. So all that sounds good. And in theory, they've already gotten out ahead of like these services sort of gaming it to not pay them as much. They say you do have to end up making that amount, but also you can't just assume that they're going to make good on this. You can't allow them to have too much control over arbitration if they're challenged by workers or by a group of workers. So I really hope that some of the politicians in New York who are making this happen are going to be watching out for it, talking to the workers and ensuring that it works the way that it's supposed to. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think really at the end of the day, for stuff like this, there should be some sort of independent body that reviews all of their payroll data, because that's the only way to make sure that their formulas and algorithms are doing what they're saying they're doing.
Yeah, 100%. But anyway, love to see it. This is the sort of thing that in theory could start to spread. More and more Americans are being forced into this sort of work. If that's gonna be the case, they should at least be paid for it. It's still difficult for a million different reasons, and the wear and tear in your car and all of that, you should at least be compensated fairly. Now, with that said, we are unfortunately out of time for the first hour of the show. Literally, as the motorcade arrives in Miami for Donald Trump to be arraigned, we'll see if we have some updates in the aftermath. Definitely on tomorrow's show, we're gonna have all the reactions to what happened. So I hope to see you all then. Benny and I will be back in the aftermath in just a minute. Welcome back to the Aftermath, everybody. I'm John Iadarola. Bennie Carollo is there. Benny, what have you been working on recently?
Well, I've been churning out a lot of videos on the breakdown at TYT Breakdown on YouTube, and like honestly, that's kind of it. Like I've been really busy.
Yeah. What topics have you been focusing on recently?
Well, I mean, usually the usual ones. Like literally, Republicans have this endless amount of content that they're churning out that's just this anti-trans nonsense. And it's something about trans people. We have this magic ability to make Republicans say and do the most obviously ridiculous things, right? And so it is honestly genuinely amazing how many new things that they can find, like how many new ways they can find to be like silly and wrong. And so I just like, if you're watching, I hope you appreciate all the psychic damage that I'm taking to turn into content for you.
What I don't understand is, and I felt this like 2 years ago at that point, I had no idea how much more they'd start talking about it, but how do you as a right-wing pundit not get bored just talking about how trans people are ruining everything all day? I mean, like I try to come up with what an equivalent, like I think the rich are ruining everything, but I don't just talk about that all day. That would get so boring and repetitive. Why are these videos still drawing views? I don't get it. It's so repetitive and stupid and baseless. But we do have some of that coming up in just a little bit, actually. So fun stuff. Let me let you know that producer Mike sent me a photo. There is a Trump supporter at the arraignment who has a stick, and on the end of that stick is a pig's head, and it appears to be a real pig's head, and it's a Trump supporter. So it's clearly like a metaphor for something, but I don't understand it. If anybody knows how that would make, like if a counter protester had the pig's head on a stick, I could sort of understand the symbolism, but I don't get it here. So anyway, a lot of craziness going on. I'm gonna read a few of your comments before we jump back into the news. We got some interesting topics to talk about. Greg Morrison says in a super chat, you know what's interesting? Whenever weapons are used in a mass shooting, they say thoughts and prayers. But when it's a weaponized DOJ, it's we need to take action. Yeah, they don't really mean it. Again, they want the government to be weaponized. Oh, I didn't make this point, by the way. Marjorie Greene says, we can't have a weaponized government going after our political opponents while trying to pass a rider to strip away the funding from the special counsel to protect her political allies, which is definitely weaponized government. It's literally using your government power to protect someone based on their political views. I don't understand it. It's not gonna bother her supporters or whatever, obviously, but Cray Souffle in the members' comments, by the way, that Photoshop that you did of the bathroom at Mar-a-Lago is going to haunt me for some time, so thank you for that. Anyway, with that said, why don't we move into a little bit of fun, starting off with this. You'll be shocked to find out that working for that man turns out to have been a bit of an ordeal. New information coming from former staffers talking with insiders show that Alex Jones, not necessarily the best boss, not really a level-headed guy, has a bit of a temper, shockingly. And so we're gonna jump into that, including details from Robert Jacobson, who started working for Jones back in 2004, which is absolutely crazy. But before we get to the details though, Benny, it's been a while since I've seen any of Alex Jones's content. I had kind of forgotten just how deranged he actually is.
I mean, like, you got to remember the classics, right? The rant about threatening to eat people, which was really weird, right? The gay frogs. Who doesn't love a gay frog? Am I right? Like there's some really good ones out there that I think were pretty strong indicators of Alex Jones going in a direction. But what do you expect? He's waging a war on information, and losing at that.
Yeah, I will. That's true. I will also say that if you want to make the case that America has been, they got some UFOs and they've been using it to develop space age technology. I don't think you should be like as evidence talking about weapons. I think you should be talking about whatever is keeping Alex Jones's heart and/or arteries from just coming apart, because there's gotta be some alien xenotech in that thing, or else his chest cavity should pop like an alien's bursting forth from it. But anyway, here is what it was like to work for Alex Jones, according to Robert Jacobson. So at one point, Robert Jacobson had put up a video from the show, but he put the wrong advertisement for a product. Like it was like Gorilla Paste or something. I don't know what he sells there. Insane stuff that does nothing and costs a lot of money. So Alex Jones runs up on Jacobson in the hallway and jabbing his fingers into the guy's face, he yelled, "You're not gonna ruin me, Jacobson. You're not gonna ruin me." According to Jacobson, Jones had to be restrained by another InfoWars staffer in case he actually hurt him. I will remind you, this is because the editor had put the wrong ad in the video. Like, that's amazing. Another former staffer, Josh Owens, says that Jones would get heavily intoxicated. The hell you say? And would badger and intimidate staffers. If staffers questioned Jones, it would send him into a rage where he'd pound his chest, destroy office equipment, and sometimes even physically hurt people. Look, I apologize for laughing. This is serious, and the workers there legitimately were abused by Alex Jones. I mean, physically even abused, let alone emotionally and psychologically and all that. But this is madness. He's like a silverback gorilla, complete with undersized genitals, just losing his mind at any minor inconvenience. Like, it's enough to make me think that he's gotta be on something like roids to have this sort of rage. But this goes back to 2004. And if he had legit been using steroids for the last few decades, you would expect something to have come from it other than just rage. So, and back knee, I guess. I don't know. Benny, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to be said. I don't know. Alex Jones's audience is really interesting because they're very much the type of people that can't tell the difference between advertisement and like content, right? That really is his market. And he really just sells this main character syndrome. So if you run through the world living in a reality of like sort of your own creation, or specifically the creation of people like Alex Jones, who just like spin all these fantastical tales, create all these ridiculous conspiracy theories, tell people that they're the main character, they're these secret alien people that are coming to get them, or lizard people that are coming to get them, you're gonna have a temper, right? Like you're gonna be really frustrated at the world because of course, you're gonna run into a lot of people that think your ideas are silly and are not gonna believe you, right? And you're gonna run into a lot of sort of like unsolvable problems at every step of the way. These are the type of people that walk into Target, see a rainbow, and they're like, oh my God, this is the lizard people specifically targeting me with gay beams into my eyeballs, right? And so, like fundamentally, when your entire job is to stoke fear and hatred and things like that, an entire audience of people, like I don't know. I think what I'm saying is I think Donald Trump. No, I think Alex Jones's temper is probably very organic, and I think a lot of his audience is probably similarly frustrated.
Yeah, look, I honestly think that if you go back prior to the Trump years or whatever, for the most part, like if I had to say who's more damaging, someone like Alex Jones, who's more deranged than like an O'Reilly or a Tucker Carlson, I would say Alex Jones is less damaging. Not universally, like when it comes to like Sandy Hook and stuff like that, really damaging. Some of the anti-LGBTQ stuff is absolutely terrible. But he didn't try to link it constantly to politics in such a clear way. It was just so over the top that I think a very significant portion of his audience didn't buy any of it. They just thought it was entertaining. I had a relative like that loved watching Alex Jones, didn't care about politics, didn't care if it was true. It's just a guy like raging around and talking about aliens and gay frogs and stuff. It becomes more serious in more recent years where they start talking more about shootings and really trying to get people to elect candidates based off of all this. QAnon, of course, was a massive attempt to just take generalized conspiracism and make it like the basis for all politics. That's where it gets more clearly damaging, I think. But anyway, I want to give you a little bit more of the information from the former employees. He had a game that he used to love to play called the punching game. So he would pass a bottle of Grey Goose vodka around his staff, always the start to a good work day. He would then have one of them repeat a made up phrase like succulent plump or juicy giblet. Then the game would turn violent. It's already turned weird. I don't know what any of that is. It seems weirdly sexual, but he would convince someone to hit him by badgering them consistently. And then he would get to hit them back. And they would trade punches back and forth. And there were times where people got, visibly injured. He was a very volatile person. His behavior was manic. So 1 second he would be laughing and joking around. The next second he would be in a blind rage. All of this is only the easiest thing in the world to accept. He is an absolute madman who figured out a way to monetize his insanity by just taking the money of his viewers, by selling them brain fuel or, I don't know, mostly dick pills. Let's be clear, it's mostly dick related stuff. But so look, if it hadn't become so explicitly political, it could have just been sort of a sideshow, a weird like public access carnival thing. But he did abuse a lot of people along the way. He also, by the way, robbed a lot of people along the way. There's a story, you can find out the full story in Insider, but they talked about how eager he was to take, like, not just his viewers' monies in general, but like he had this old couple that gave him like their social security check when they said they had no money, and he was like totally down. Like he didn't care at all about draining the last cents out of these people who were barely making do. He, by the way, was pulling in tens of millions of dollars a year. So I don't know, there's a very sick side to this as well. Any final thoughts, Benny?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, the reality is pretty much every right-wing pundit at this point is aspiring to be the next Alex Jones, and they're just wondering how close they can get to the line without being dragged into court like Alex Jones was.
Yeah, I mean, Tucker Carlson, I think for the last couple of years has been stealing more and more of Alex Jones's thing. And to the extent that Tucker Carlson has a show on Twitter or whatever, it was random conspiracy. He was talking about JFK, he was talking about aliens, he was talking about all that stuff. I don't know why Alex Jones isn't more visibly angry about this, by the way. Maybe he thinks he's got such like, a chokehold on his audience that he's not worried about them being taken by Tucker Carlson, but they really are stealing his business model. Anyway, with that said, we're going to jump to another topic in just a sec. First though, RJL Network, member for 29 months, says Block Dragon says re-indicted and it feels so good. Re-indicted and it's understood. I hope you're so excited because Trump's being re-indicted. Hey, hey. Nice. I'll allow a little bit of music on this audacious day. James Thompson says USA Air Force vet retired, alien quality control. I don't know if that's a serious thing or if it's just a George Santos joke. I'm surprised George Santos hasn't claimed to have seen aliens. It would be less crazy than some of the claims that he's made. Anyway, Heidi Barber, welcome to Tier 1 membership. Glad to have you aboard. With that, why don't we jump into some further insanity with this?
I call on many people in the gay community. I call on them to stand against this because their movement has been hijacked. And last night, Charlie, I'll finish up one more thing. In the night last night, where I live in Washington, D.C., late into the night, all I heard was the crowd all around, all over the streets, having the Pride Festival continuing on. And when I had to drive back to my condo yesterday, I witnessed so much of it as we drove through it all. I mean, I even saw one woman that had no pants on.
That's amazing. She was so affected by totally, and this is true, this is honest, not seeing a woman with pants, that she went to an interview and talked about it. I saw a woman without pants. Were you at the beach? You get that they didn't like invent this. It's not like Pride was the first place where people realized that you could wear less than khakis. I love that she's like amazed by this. But anyway, it has been hijacked, and I don't know what of the story that she went on to tell was supposed to be evidence of that. Was it the no pants thing? Were people in Pride decades ago more respectful of bearing knee? And now that's just anything goes. You can just show your knees off if you want. Or is it the fact that there is a Pride festival at all, which by the way, has been around for a little bit? I don't know what point that she's trying to make other than the fact that she hates the fact that people are proud. I don't know, what do you think?
No, I get it. Yeah, I'm the woke transgender that has hijacked Pride single-handedly, and no, it's just silly, like on its face, like fundamentally. I mean, like the whole notion of like Pride being hijacked. I mean, literally, are we just gonna like, once again, the history of Stonewall, right? It was a black trans woman that like threw a brick at a cop, and there was like a whole protest about it. It was like a whole entire thing. I don't know, like the first Stonewall was a riot. That's like the history of, the history of the fight for queer liberation across the United States, right? Was very much led by trans people. But obviously, right wingers don't care about reality. They don't care about the rights of gay people. They just are they're trying to use gay people as a shield. And it's genuinely really, really funny because they'll like, drag out some like random, like very privileged, like gay white man and be like, oh, see, he doesn't really like transgender people. That clearly means that all the gay people out there don't like transgender people. And turn it into this big thing and turn into a discourse about Pride, when the actual reality is like, no, trans people have always been a part of Pride, and like people wearing cute little outfits has also been a part of Pride. That's kind of the whole point, like, just being yourself in public in a very confrontational way.
And by the way, what I'm gonna say is gonna be pointless because none of these people are being honest about anything about what they believe, why they're pushing for it, why they're making it a focus of politics. But if you actually had as a goal, I don't want there to be Pride anymore. I'm sick of it. I don't want to see the parades. I don't want stores to focus so much on it. Why are they making such a big deal? Then maybe don't put forward like over 500 anti-LGBT bills so far just this year, and hundreds the year before that, and hundreds the year before that. Do they not get that you would not need to have an organized thing to get people to feel briefly accepted and to make themselves more visible if they were just accepted? If they weren't under constant assault, then it wouldn't be a big thing. It would just be normal. But of course they don't care because they don't actually have, I mean, I don't think that she wants to see the Pride thing or whatever, although she probably is perfectly fine with seeing some people without pants who wouldn't be. But it's a convenient political attack. It's what they use politically. You said that they're using gay people as a shield. My version of it would be they're using the entire LGBTQ community as meat that you throw into the pond so the piranha will attack it. Or a sacrifice, basically, that you stake up and push into a volcano so that like the simpletons will be like, yes, that will placate the gods. Like it's all just this thing to like focus and intensify their primal negative emotions. It's sickening. Let's have a little bit of fun briefly though, because Marjorie Greene is confused about Pride. She's confused about pants. She's confused about a lot of stuff. Here she is being confused about porn.
There is a website, you may or may not have heard about it, called Pornhub. It is a disgusting porn website. As a matter of fact, it should be illegal.
Did she just discover it? Do you know what I found at 2 a.m.? I'd gone through a lot of other websites and I was looking for something really extreme, and I found this thing and it should be illegal, I thought afterward. Yeah, no, it exists. Pornography is not new. Pornhub did not actually invent it, whatever claims you might have heard to the contrary. And no, people in the privacy of their home accessing pornography is not a major scandal. It does not require government intervention. My God, are they out of touch? What do you think?
I don't know, it very much has the energy of like, my husband got a computer virus that changed his search history. Like, and I think that should be illegal.
I love also, so like she's asking the question, have you heard of this website Pornhub? And there's just like a whole crowd of conservatives like, no, what's that? Oh yeah,
never in my life, I swear to God. Like, no, it's just so funny though, because like this is how unlikable these people are. This is like the brief moment of like Marjorie Taylor Greene like revealing like who she is, right? If Marjorie Taylor Greene lived 500 years ago, she would be leading a witch hunt. Like unironically, if Marjorie Taylor Greene got into a time machine, present day Marjorie Taylor Greene got into a time machine, she would be like, yes, I came from the future and I'll tell you where all the witches are. Like that is the level that she's at. Like she would be running witch hunts today if she could. Like these people are such joyless creatures, right? That all they want to do is just bring joy away from other people's lives, to just like make other people as miserable as they are. Yeah. And so I don't know, if you're ever talking to a conservative and you're trying to compromise with them, just remember that nothing you ever do or say to make compromises with them will make them happy, because their goal is not to be happy themselves with the world, it's to make everybody else as miserable as they are. And I think this kind of encapsulates that in some sort of weird way.
100%, 100%. Okay, well, let's unfortunately end with a slightly more serious story. Rabid transphobia focused around girls' sports is not just an American thing. You know what happened in British Columbia recently? 2 grade 4 girls were accused of being boys by the grandfather of a competitor. That's, you can read the details. It's Kelowna, a track meet, basically. A 9-year-old girl, a deranged, possibly drunk grandfather shouting at these little girls that they're getting away with something because they obviously must be trans. This happened at the Apple Bowl. And Heidi Starr is the mother of one of the girls, posted on Facebook about the experience, saying of the girl, she was shaking and sobbing. All the kids that were there went, "This is gross, this is rude, why would he be doing this?" The other child, he pointed out, just ran away altogether. Remember, it's 9-year-olds. He stopped the entire event, declaring that my daughter was a boy. My daughter's a girl, was born female, and uses she, her pronouns. She has a pixie cut. The man proceeded to say that if my daughter was not a boy, then she was definitely trans and should be disqualified from competing. In the meantime, his wife was shouting that I was a genital mutilator, a groomer, and a pedophile. The man then demanded that I provide a certificate proving that my daughter was born female. My daughter was so shaken up, she has never witnessed this kind of hate before. The man apparently is now banned at School District 23 property and events. That seems reasonable. Look, the fact that this happened outside of the US, I guess, shouldn't be too surprising. This sort of, the social contagion of, xenophobic insanity is not new, but just disgusting that someone would so hijack an event for little kids like this. But Benny, what do you think?
I mean, this tracks perfectly with like how transphobes are in real life. I literally was just trying to cross the street like a week ago with my boyfriend, and some random woman starts on the phone, like while she's on the phone, starts like randomly screaming at me. This is who they are. Like at the end of the day, these transphobic people have no commitment to like decency at all. So of course they're going to harass children. Of course they're going to be incredibly invasive into people's lives. Of course they're going to disrupt like basic childhood moments for like entire schools of children who are just trying to do like a sports thing, right? That's who these people are. They have this weird, rigid, puritanical view of what the world should be. They are deeply suspicious about basically everybody. I mean, don't even get me started about transvestigators, the people who think that every celebrity is secretly trans. Like, fundamentally, these people are dangerous and pathetic.
I'd forgotten about that. Yeah, the people who get like millions of views on analyzing photos and things. We live in an insane place. I will remind you though, yes, this is in Canada or whatever, but like think about the confidence, the interest you have to have in trans people and the confidence you have to declare, not to think or to say to your spouse, I think that's a boy, but to yell it. And then to yell at the parents, you're groomers and pedophiles and genital mutilators. But I want you to remember that people on the right have not just been demonizing trans people, they have been explicitly telling their audience, you need to get out there and get in people's face. Charlie Kirk was just at that women's leadership thing. We just talked about it yesterday, was telling girls there in your locker room, you berate these people. You go and talk to these people. Tucker Carlson was talking about in a park. If you see weirdos and perverts, you should get in their face. If it was near my kid, I'd punch him in the face. They are explicitly pushing for verbal and physical harassment. And this is how it manifests. Anyway, that is unfortunately all the time we have for the show today. Special thanks to Benny for joining us. Benny, sorry for ending on a down note, but we appreciate you being here.
Yeah, it was great to be here.
Everyone check out Benny's work over on Rebel HQ. Thank you. All of you here, thank you for joining us. I am actually going to be joining J.R. Jackson on the watch list later on today. It's the first time, I think. So hopefully we'll have a lot of members of the Dragon Squad there, and we can drown out, I'm gonna say the list watchers, I'm gonna guess. No, I'm kidding, everyone be nice. But anyway, I will be there. I hope to see you all there. For now though, stay safe out there, stay sane out there, and I'll see you soon.